it's a good opportunity. Behind the screen, it's not usual for me. Huh? We love to receive the people. We love to go with the people on the vineyard, on the cellar. Bon, we have to adapt our business or marketing, but it's a great pleasure to try to have this moment with you. To speak about Olivier Leflaive, it's always difficult because when you are the winemaker, the technical director like me since 32 years, you have to be honest and to be logical. Donc, you have to understand that we are, if we have to be classified, we are on the same time estate, but almost a négociant, because we have all the vineyard that we purchase and that we produce. No, because you are not owner, you are négociant. We started this company in '84. On the beginning, it was difficult because our place has to be win on the market. We were in front of, and we are always in front of Jadot, Latour, etc., etc. So we have to begin, and I suggest to Olivier, because I came from Domaine Rouleau in Marceau. I suggest to Olivier, you have to try to find a way to make wine a little bit different with the other people. You have to try the lieu dit, you have to try the climat, you have to create a portfolio of different source of grapes. And the objective is to have grapes to manage the process and to have some vineyard. Donc, he say, okay, the challenge is okay for me. And I said, Olivier, I appreciate you, you're the boss, but I need to be free. Donc, I need the key of the trick, and I like to be free. You're my boss. I have to deliver the message, but I need to be free. And he said, okay. Donc, since all the time, we are a couple. I pass sometimes more time with Olivier than with my wife and my family. And more, Olivier Leflaive start to buy finished wine after we purchase the juice, and after and now we purchase the grapes more and more. And finally, Olivier Leflaive, it's a little bit like if we produce 100 hectares of vineyard, and we have 100 labels, 85 label of white and 15, 20 label of red, Pinot Noir, just from Côte de Beaune. Donc we are a producer. We purchase everything what we need during the harvest. Donc we manage, we have a team of a harvester. We're going to collect ourselves the grapes to enter, to have the process of the press, who's fundamental for me, who's necessary. And after it's aging, and we have no secret, we are just winemaker. We don't making the wine differently with other domain, with other négociants. We like to create wine with stilly for the terroir, from the terroir, stilly from the vintage. And for me, it's always a combination between the reality of a territory and the reality of a year. And after, you have to manage the process, you have to manage the winemaking. And it's very important, for example, to speak when you're speaking about a vintage like 19, was very low because frost, because low flowering, difficult condition. You have to adapt your winemaking differently and to work with the origin of the grapes, and to try to create the wine who seems correct for the year. For example, a year like this year, it was difficult to prove the identity of every terroir of Meursault, of Puligny. Donc it was necessary sometimes to eliminate the risk to create a wine from a specific place, because I think sometimes it's the blend was the better wine produced. I have to explain that promise that Olivier gave me, it's to have own vineyard. Donc today, Olivier Leflaive manage 17 hectares, 20 hectare vineyard, because we have contract where we're making the job on the vineyard and we can purchase the grapes. Olivier Leflaive, it's approximately, I repeat again, the equivalent of 100 hectares, 60 hectares are managed by ourselves in terms of harvest, because it's organized by our team. And after, for the rest, it's juice. Donc, for example, we're producing a large range of wine from the Côte d'Or origin, like Auxey d'Urès, that we will taste after, Saint-Romain, Pernan-Vergelès. But we're going on the Côte Chalonnaise with Montagny, with Reuilly Premier Cru. We're going to Chablis to produce a little bit Montée de Tonnerre and Fourchaume and Chablis regular and a Grand Cru Vaudésir. And of course, we are not specialists, because you're never specialist of anything, but we are a good producers of specific Meursault, specific Chassagne, and specific Puligny. It's the large territory that we like to manage. And for example, for the first value, we're producing a wine that probably some of you taste before. It's Bourgogne Blanc Les Setti. Bourgogne Blanc Les Setti, it's just the Bourgogne Blanc, where the sourcing comes from Meursault and Puligny mainly, separate on the winemaking, and after to create a blend of Bourgogne Blanc with the big part in barrel fermentation and another part in tank. And it's the same thing for example, you have a pictures in front of you, it's the Chassagne Abbey de Morgeau. It's a magnificent territory, but we are in Premier Cru. We're working with the style of the soil, we're working with the style of the vintage, and we try to make wine very simply. We have no secret, but we try to develop the idea of every source of grapes. And if Auxey d'Urès has to be Auxey d'Urès, Puligny has to be Puligny, and Chassagne. The nature is more strong than me. I'm just a man. I'm not a magician. I try to give what I think in the bottle, and donc it's a lot of different decisions, but not to be metaphoric. It's necessary to compare a little bit the job of winemaker with the job of cooker. The fact is, a cooker go to the market the morning, make the food and the cuisine during 1 day, 2 days, and is judged immediately. For me, I begin to take decision during the season before the harvest, during the harvest, after the harvest, and I finish to be judged or 1 year or 2 years, or sometimes 5, 10 years later by you, by the journalist, and finally, we make a job together, because all of us with the social media, with a lot of things, we are all critics, and that's good. And it's good that the people, that the consumer begin to be a taster. Individually, the people, the level of the consumption of wine in the world change a lot. All the people like to have tasting notes, they love to read, they love to taste, they're buying some wine, they know the wine from everywhere. The market in England is magnificent. In France, we're consuming more the wine from here, but in England, you have the luck to have the Argentina wines, New Zealand, Australia, everywhere. You have a culture of the wine, and you're able, like everybody, to judge and to have an opinion. And the objective of this evening is to try to exchange your sentiment, your tasting notes, and I'm waiting for you about question to explain what's the matter. After, my philosophy, it's very simple, very simple. After, I think we will have probably question concerning the growing contract, what is this available, are we working, is it biologic, is it conventional, is it biodynamic? Voilà, we can speak about the winemaking. I'm ready to explain and to answer to the question, whatever the situation.
Franck, can you tell us a little bit about the 19 vintage before we move on to the first wine? I think just a couple of minutes to explain.
19 was just a little bit complicated, a little bit like 16. To understand, we had a dry winter, not a lot of rain. We received rain just in January, but December was really cool. Donc in January, we received a lot of water. After a couple of months, February and March, really dry. And again, in the end of March, good rain, important rain. So we said, okay, it's good for the future season. But unfortunately, on the beginning of April, 5 April, to be clear, movement of the moon, clear weather, fresh, and the temperature decreased rapidly in the space of 2 days from 5 degrees plus to 5 degrees less, 0. And the amplitude is terrible. Why? Because the buds start to begin with the cool condition of March, and we were in a front of when the buds were with 2 leaves. No, we didn't see the grapes, but the growing was enough to be terrible if we receive frost. And despite the fact to burn the straw, to put the candle, to have wind turbine. We try many things to eliminate and to push the fresh wind, the fresh condition. Not fresh, cold, and cold under 0. Donc we had ice. We had a little bit ice on the way on the area of the buds, and despite all a lot of job during few nights, because it was an activity between 5 and 7 a.m. when the moon is important, when the sky is clear. If we had a cloudy sky, we can survive. But unfortunately, it was open. The moon was touched, and with the fresh temperature, the disaster was immediately, we said we lost 50%. Alors, after that, April was not bad in terms of temperature. When you have a fragile vegetation like this one, you are very stressed because the fungus could arrive. It was not the problem. We had good cool temperature in April, in May, but we were in late to the normal season. In June, it was the period of flowering. Donc we're waiting for a good flowering. Unfortunately, when the temperature need to be around in Celsius 18 degrees, we decreased to 10. Donc we had not a bad flowering, but a complicated flowering period. Donc we lost a little bit more because mirandage, the berries are not the normal flowering, and immediately they contract the skin, they contract the size. You are in front of tiny berry. It's not a problem for the quality, just a problem for the quantity. Donc the quantity after was we lost 50-60%, and after we had a very dry summer. The very dry summer, it's not a problem when you add a little bit of water. The water was not difficult, but it was a stress. And look, we had a little bit stress hydric in July. Finally, in August, when the level of sugar were good to pick. For example, usually I like to pick my grapes of Chardonnay early. I wait for the Pinot, but for the Chardonnay, I love when the fruit is enough in terms of sugar. I look the pips and I look the acidity, and the acidity was always a little bit high. And for me, the phenolic maturity was not obtained. Donc I say, despite the fact to have low yield, I prefer to wait a little bit more to capture the phenolic and to have a little bit more phenolic maturity. Donc Olivier was a little bit surprised, because usually for me, I love to pick early. Donc I decide to pass and to wait 10 days more. Donc finally, we decide to pick 11 September, and in the space after all the maturity were on the same time. Donc we had a short period of harvest, and after we were in front of big alcohol, low yield, and big concentration. For me, it's not a problem, but after you have to manage your winemaking. Donc difficult press in grapes enter. Donc we had less juice that we can, if we compare with the weight of the grapes, but we have great acidity. We have a good phenolic maturity. Donc I was very quiet with the new oak percentage, with the listering. We work slowly, and I separate like every time all the vineyard to have a specific winemaking. And after we create really the cuvée when every barrel was finished. I love to have always the malolactic realized. I don't stop the malolactic. And after, I was very upset to have to keep the fruit with a richness, with a strong character, but it was not a vintage that you can taste early, like for example, 18 or like 17. 19 was more complicated to arrive. We conserve more lees. We working with a turbidity very high. For example, for me, it's usual to keep 10 liters of lees per barrel. This year in 19, I conserve 15, 20 liters sometimes of lees. Donc we have wine with barrel charged in lees, always trouble all the time, and to develop the character, a wine has to be clarified. Donc we had to wait the time when the wine were ready. And for example, I prepare just some bottling now, when usually I make some bottling of 18 in November, in December. Here it will be for March. Donc beginning of March, we will bottling some Puligny, les Mets, les Blanchots, for example, for the cuvée of Oxé d'Urès. It was realized in autumn, but I'm a little bit late, but I take the time. It's logical. When the cycle is late, the winemaking is generally more late. And again, we have to work with, we are just the surveillants, like a college. You have a lot of barrel, a lot of young people, and you have to manage the winemaking just to try to do the best. After, again, you will judge my wine. I'm not able to speak about that, but I'll explain that just it's a job when you have different origin of vineyard, of rootstock, of soil, of old wines, young wines, different yield, different growing, and after you have to consider every personality of every wine, and after to create the wine who seems to be the good value of the year for specific. And that's true. It's a complex job, difficult to explain, but on the same time, I think 19 is difficult to compare, because I'm asking the question, how do you compare 19? 19, it's a blend of 2003 for the alcohol. For 86 was very alcoholic like this, with a good concentration. But on the same time, it's not the style of these two vintage. It's more exciting, but it's exciting like for the power. For example, 2015 was great for me, rich and with ambition. For the yield, we are approaching 16. We are approached than 83. We are approached than we were with a very tiny. I'm here since 32 years in Puligny. Never I saw Puligny Montrachet around 25 hectoliters per hectare. It's unusual, and it's not the style of the Puligny. Puligny is good when you have a minimum of juice. When it's juicy, Puligny is fine. Is elegant. Has a good balance. 19 is not under the level, under the character of the wine. It's completely on the character of the wine, but with too much. It's like me a little bit. I have some pound more than potential. Probably my body is maybe for 80 pound, and when you pass, you are a little bit okay, charge a little bit, but it's interesting vintage. The fact is, I would like to show the wine and to speak with you with the wine in front of you. Unfortunately, they are not Bordeaux, and I'm not. I think it's not a good idea to send samples before the bottling. I prefer to organize another shot with you after you receive the wine. But It's a nice wine. After, I don't say it's a great vintage. I think it's a vintage, a little bit power, a little bit rich, but interesting. After, you will be judged.
Look, Franck, thank you so much. I mean, you know, there's one thing I disagree with you on. I've got my wand here. You are the magician. And although you're very self-effacing, you just need one of these.
Ah, good.
You're very self-effacing, but there's absolutely no doubt in my mind, or anybody's in Burgundy, without, you know, wanting your head to take on the extra pounds. There's nobody who would ever accuse you of not being a magician, as far as I'm concerned. Certainly, you know, from what I've tasted, and I think Joe, who's joined us, Joe Muller, who's well in the centre of my screen, not necessarily yours. But
Hello.
2019s that we've tasted in recent weeks and months have been quite extraordinary, both whites and reds. And I think while, you know, Franck, you're living and breathing your own wines all the time, for us, we were, you know, anticipating these powerful 2019s, of course. I mean, not powerful in the sense of California or perhaps Argentina or you know, some of these really big 15%ers. But these wines have got power, but they've got the balancing acidity. And you told me that from the start. They've got this really concentrated acidity that stands the wines in good stead. So while the vintage, I think, as you say, will be an anomaly, and actually one of those, you know, super styles that, you know, of which there will not be very much, that people will find utterly drinkable, but also will have longevity. I mean, we will see, of course. And when you come back in a year's time, I've got the date in the diary.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, we'll be sharing those wines. Anyway, I want to move on, if that's okay, on to the tasting section of tonight, because I'm sure that everybody would like to start tasting the wines more seriously. So we've got 3 wines tonight. We've got Ossiduretta Macabre 2018, which we started off with. I'm very delicious. It is, in my view. We have Chassagne Montrachet Blanchot 2017, and the same vintage of Puligny Montrachet. Why did
two regular? It's 2 regular wine.
Huh?
It's regular Chassagne and regular Puligny. It's not Premier Cru. No, okay. No. It's okay to explain.
Absolutely, and we'll go into that in more detail.
Yes.
Just a quick note on why we chose the wines. Actually, Franck and I sort of chose the wines, and it's a bit selfish because they're actually some of our favourites, and we wanted to be on the front foot and share our favourites with you, and they're favourites for different reasons. So we'll go into that a little bit as we go along. So during this section, we're going to talk through the wines one by one, and we'll talk a little bit, Franck will talk a little bit about the appellation in each case and the lieu dit, the actual site and the specificity of that site and what it is that makes that site so special, and why, you know, we're working with these wines exclusively here. What else? We will be asking questions as we go along. I think Joe will no doubt have questions. I will. But if you do have questions, please do put them in the chat box, as Colette said at the get-go, and we'll try and answer every single one if we can. All right, Franck. Ossiduretta Macabre.
Oh, we're speaking about La Macabre?
We are.
Would you like just a few comments about 18 or just La Macabre and 18 after? Just 18. 18 is a little bit inverse to 19. We had a rainy autumn, a good reserve of water, and during all the season, the vineyard was never touched by the hydric stress, never. Donc we had a logical year. It was no frost, no hail, nothing. The grapes were perfect. And the grapes have good benefit about the season, and because they have enough water, I have to be honest. It was a vintage a little bit maximum for the yield. Alors it was not like in Champagne, but it was the maximum of yield for the Chardonnay and a very good yield for the Pinot Noir. It was but we had on the same time nice quality of grapes. It was always perfect. It was just a little bit, sometimes a little bit too much grapes. Donc I decided to work like in Champagne. I said, okay, the yield is a little bit generous, donc I will restrain a little bit the juice. And because for me, it was necessary to have a good balance between the sugar and the acidity, I start my season of grapes 25 August. Donc 25 August, it's early, but it was not the record. And I decide to press rapidly, immediately, to conserve just the head, the milieu, the middle of the juice, not to have so much press. And I decrease the lees on the barrel. Donc I said I would like to manage a wine with a lot of fruit, with a lot of elegance. My objective was to be clear and to be very prudent with the new oak. And the fact is, Auxey d'Urès. Could we have the map about Auxey d'Urès? If it's possible.
Yes, good idea.
It's a little territory. Huh? You have to understand, Auxey d'Urès was classified more in Côte de Beaune than Auxey d'Urès alone. Meursault is an appellation with always presented alone. Auxey d'Urès was a little bit included in the Côte de Beaune, in the Côte de Beaune county. If you look the low part of Auxey d'Urès, you have a little bit pinky purple area with just here on the top of the screen, La Macabrée. La Macabrée, it's very neighborhood with Meursault village. But I don't say that Auxey La Macabrée is a Meursault village, but the Auxey La Macabrée profit about some mall around below the hill of Saint Christophe, who's here, and it's a soil with a very good limestone. But Macabrée means sorry, excuse me. Macabrée means in the old word marais, marécage. It's a place when you have a little bit of water. Donc marsh, c'est ça, marsh.
Marshy. Yeah.
Alors, to be honest, I never saw water like you can see after a good rain, but it's true that below the hill, just behind Auxey d'Urès, you have a little source of water coming down, and we cross the vineyard to go a little bit up. We cross completely Auxey d'Urès and coming down after on the low part of the territory. The Macabrée, it's a subsoil with very little stony and marly. Donc what is the marl? It's a combination of a sort of powder of limestone with very fine clay. Alors, it's not the same quality of soil that you can find on the Meursault, who are just neighborhood. And if you look the orientation of the vineyard, you can see that the position in Meursault are more south, and the position of Auxey d'Urès is a bit more northeast. Donc you have no the same orientation. Donc because you have no the same orientation, despite the fact that the wine are neighborhood, Meursault will be picked and will be harvested a little bit early than La Macabrée. The phenolic maturity of Auxey d'Urès is always more long to obtain. You obtain more rapidly the phenolic maturity in Meursault neighborhood with Auxey than Auxey d'Urès. Auxey d'Urès is a style a little bit medium body, but it's a style with a lot of freshness character. This wine is totally barrel fermented, 100%, with just 12-15% of new oak. But this is a wine, and this blend comes from 3 vineyards. We have the luck to purchase 3 vineyards. 2 are very old. One is really young, 12 years. The young vineyard has to be harvested early because it's like this. She's not able to survive after a long. Inversely, the old vineyard could survive. Donc we begin to pick the young vineyard and the 2 old vineyards later. Everything is separate on the winemaking, and in a moment, because like you can see, maybe other people, we producing an Oxyduresse La Macabre from this specific territory, really the border with Meursault, but we're producing on the same time an Oxyduresse with one or two representation of the different area just around La Macabre. Donc we have two wine, and I conserve always a little bit of La Macabre to blend with my other origin of Oxyduresse. This is a wine a little bit flinty, gun flinty, pierre à fusil, you understand? When you take your knife and you, voilà, it's logical because momently we conserve a little bit lees more than usual for the Oxyduresse La Macabre because for me it's a wine that I love because it's fresh, it's tight, it's a little bit reductive, but is always pleasant, and the fact is able to be conserved more than logical Côte de Beaune. I love this wine, and it's always very interesting to compare because, for example, if you look the map, well, it's difficult, but Meursault-Livreuil is just on the north of this area. Meursault-les-Méchaveaux is just below than La Macabre, and Meursault-les-Luchers is just in front. And I have one representation for my Meursault village of these three terroirs. And sometimes it's always interesting to compare the three Meursault neighborhood with La Macabre. And we have the same concentration on middle of the palette, but we have the style when Meursault could be, we can have some expression of Meursault, but we have the north position who give the calcareous finish, give the more gentle finish. It's not less, it's a little bit less power, less heavy, less rich, but on the same time, I think very elegant. Enfin, after, it's my opinion. I'm asking, I'm waiting for your question.
Indeed. I mean, Franck, for me, I love this wine personally, and it's going back to what we've been conversing in the chat group about Oxyduresse and the typicity here. I mean, the location, it's almost really textbook, and I think what's even more of a doff the chapeau is with the vintage. 2018 is a warm vintage, a ripe vintage, and yes, there is a lovely ripeness there, but crikey, again, there's a bright acidity which comes through. And going back to the location, there is this richness which is almost Meursault-esque, potentially Chassagne-esque, but again, it comes in with attention, and there is a focus there. And then, as you said, that chalky sort of almost saline character really rifles through the wine. And for people who are looking for brilliantly good white Burgundy to drink on a more affordable level than Meursault, this for me is probably like one of the first places to visit.
Just a detail, just to explain a little bit. After again, no confusion for me between an Oxyduresse and Meursault, but between this vineyard of La Macabre, and for some people behind the screen who know a little bit some producers in Meursault, Jean-François Coche or Jean-Marc Rouleau, les Luchers, they have vineyard. The distance between this vineyard of La Macabre and the Meursault of Jean-François Coche and Jean-Marc Rouleau, les Luchers, it's 70, 80 meters on the same line. But the orientation, the subsoil is not the same, but it's just on the same time. Donc, they have the same sun exposure, but they have not the same subsoil exposure. Donc, this is the mistake. This is the reality of our county, where sometimes Jean-Marc Rouleau is my cousin. He produced an Oxyduresse Léoté just above La Macabre. Voilà. And Oxyduresse has its place on the portfolio of a restaurant because it's a little bit more light, but it's very elegant. After, it's my opinion, and I'm waiting for your question. Are we speaking after? Or you like to answer the question wine per wine?
We'll try and do it as we go along. I'm just very conscious of time, so we need to move on. But I have a question actually, Franck, which may be relevant. What do you think the impact of climate change might be on some of the so-called lesser appellations, ones that perhaps have been a bit cool or have like a more northern exposition. Do you think that over time those, you know, like Saint-Romain, like the Haute Côte, do you think that those will increase in quality?
After to ask this question with my honest position could be the interpretation could be more difficult. I have to explain to you modestly. In 1989, when I started here on this company, it was possible for me to purchase some wine from Auxey-Durès, from Saint-Romain, from Pernon-Vergelès, to put in my Bourgogne Blanc, because they bring to me the acidity, but just acidity, not the phenolic. The phenolic, I have more phenolic sometimes in the Bourgogne Blanc when I compare with everything changed because global warming. The global warming, the distance, you know, it's approximately 87. In moment of 87, probably the climate change. I'm not able to explain why. After just, for me, it's to the regard, the view about the things. Today, probably the best vineyard on the immediate future will be the Saint-Romain, will be the Pernon. Why? Because they are more young. You have never to forget that this area, Montelis, Auxey-Durès, Pernon, were a little bit abandoned after the phylloxera because it was difficult, because they were very stony, because on the 50, on the 60, they have the equipment that we have today. Sometimes to work on the calcareous, to work with the Rochemer calcaire, it was not easy. Remember, look, when you have a trip on the Canty, you look some wall with stone that the people, when they plow the vineyard, they find big stone and they push on the side. And more you create wall and you create some claw like this. Huh? And we have never to forget that after
vineyard.
the phylloxera, this area were abandoned. Saint-Aubin was abandoned. Pernon was just around the Corton-Charlemagne, the best place. But some plateau or some low part of this and complicated situation were not planted for this reason. And now we can see that probably the balance of acidity, sugar is correctly realized with this sort of wine, when before, on the past time, it was more acidity and green character and not mature character. The phenolic character was not obtained 30 years ago. Now it's perfectly obtained, and the success of this wine came from because the logical movement of the global warming was profitable for this, and inversely less profitable for Meursault, for Puligny, for Chassagne, because in a moment the acidity could be less than before, and you have never to forget that the acidity is the perfect parameter to propose a young aging for the wine, an aging for the wine. Without acidity, it's not possible to have a correct aging. I speak for white, I don't speak for red. Okay, it's very important to know that Pernon, Vergelès, that the Haute Côte de Beaune today for the Bourgogne Haute Côte de Beaune, it's magnificent. After, you have to be quiet. You have to wait the maturity, and not because the guy from Puligny going to the vineyard that the Haute Côte, they have 2 weeks, 3 weeks of distance, and sometimes you can have a nice period of harvest in the Côte de Beaune and to have a difficult period of harvest 2 weeks later because raining. The problem is autumn. With the equinox, the rain charge arrive, and sometimes if the harvest is not finished for 21 September, it could be a disaster after for the Haute Côte. But logically, they are the big winner of the global warming. They are the big winner, and they have a very nice position. For me, the problem is after it's the drink. it reduces stress.
I mean, it's a huge area, and obviously, you know, attracting a lot of discussion at the moment. I think we could talk for hours about this, but let's move on now to the second wine, which is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
Chassagne Montrachet Blanchot, which is just such an amazing, a brilliant site. And Franck, tell us about it. I hope everybody has poured themselves.
Blanchot, it's a wine that I love since a long time, because it was one of my first contracts that I obtained a long time ago. I had the luck to have Chassagne Blanchot dessous, who is a regular village today, to purchase a little bit of Chassagne Blanchot Premier Cru dessus in front, classified Premier Cru.
So they're two different sites, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. But the fact is, it's very important to know if a map is able to be present to the public. Chassagne Blanchot that you have in your glass, it's the continuity of the range of Criot Bâtard Montrachet, Grand Cru were just neighborhood. If you look the map here on the south position, when you have orange position, this is Criot Bâtard Montrachet. Donc Criot Bâtard Montrachet, the range, they are 50 meters, 60 meters, and the last 50 meters, this is Chassagne Blanchot dessous, regular Chassagne.
Colette,
it's a very nice position. Yeah. The soil is very limestone, it's very tiny, it's very rocky. Just because Criot Bâtard and some Bâtard are a little bit on slope, you have just to understand that with the time, the erosion of the Criot Bâtard going down and were stopped in the Chassagne Blanchot. Donc, the subsoil, the rocky soil is here, but more and more with the time, a little bit soil is a little bit more important since, for example, 1 century ago or 2 centuries ago. But you have to understand, I'm not able to prove it, but I will prove just for the Blanchot Premier Cru, who's just in front and is yellow, just above, below le Montrachet, Chassagne Blanchot dessus. All this area was included in the Bâtard Montrachet territory until 1921. And in 1921, some expert who decide to prepare the classification will arrive for the village, for the Premier Cru, for the Grand Cru in 1935. They said, Blanchot Premier Cru has to be called Blanchot Bâtard Montrachet. And Criot Bâtard Montrachet has to be called Bâtard Montrachet, and Blanchot dessous, village that you have in your glass, will be probably just a village. So it was, but it's probably that on the Middle Age, all the Blanchot village, Premier Cru and Criot were introduced in the Bâtard Montrachet territory. It was separate finally in 1935. Voilà. Donc Blanchot, it's for me one of the best Chassagne village that you can find. After, is it your style or not your style? I cannot judge for you, but you are with a wine very tiny. Chassagne Blanchot, it's one and a half hectare. Donc exactly. Sorry, because I prepared my notes, but every year I will find it later. Les Blanchots, it's 5 acres. 5 acres of Blanchot. You have several origin of different vignerons, and I purchased this vineyard since a long time. Donc if you taste this wine in 95, for example, in 96, it's always the same vineyard. It's a contract. It's not my vineyard. We purchase grapes all the time. But I purchase, for example, the job of Olivier Leflaive, it's not to purchase everything. It's to purchase the part. And momently, this is a vigneron who rent a vineyard, and I purchase the part of the owner. Donc, it's a vigneron that I know since a long time. He make the vineyard, he growing the vineyard, and I purchase the part of the owner of this vineyard. Voilà. It's totally barrel fermented. It's 25% new oak in 17. Probably a little bit too much, but I love it's creamy, it's plumpy, it's a very typical Chassagne. 17 was again for me a nice vintage because it was very fine, very good yield, not so much, but good balance between sugar. Don't all this wine, this is totally natural degree for me, but it's 13.2 natural, and the malolactic is finished, and the pH is around 3.2, donc with good acidity, with good tartric level. It's a terroir that it's necessary for me to pick not early, but never late, or after. The fact is, my anxious is to receive a storm in August and the water stay, because we are on the top. After it's a national road. Donc, when it's raining so much, the rain coming always down. It's logical. I never invent anything. And if we conserve water in August in a fresh condition, the style of the wine could be rich and a little bit over mature. The risk is just here. So a risk of over maturation that you have never in Puligny, because Puligny is more drained. Chassagne is more clayed, a little bit more clayed. For this reason, you have the two color. In Chassagne, you have at the same time Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. On this area, it's only Chardonnay, because for me, it's the best place for the white. After, I don't say that that sometimes Chardonnay is never good everywhere in Chassagne. For me, some soil are for Pinot, some soil are for better for Pinot Noir.
Wonderful.
Tell me,
Franck,
give me your opinion.
Would you briefly touch upon the vintage 2017? Obviously, we've had 18, and for me, 17 is a beautiful white vintage. In Burgundy, it eclipses the reds for me personally. Would you touch on it?
The season was good because we had correct reservoir water, and we have after 16. 16 was a little bit like 19 in terms of yield. It was a disaster. Donc, when you have a low yield and hail and difficult, but almost frost, you waiting for sometimes a sort of overactivity for the next season. And we were surprised to see that just the yield of 17 was correct, but no abundant happiness, because we had perfect class. It was a season quite calm, without hail, without big important thing, no fungus. It was very dry. We picked the grapes not later, but not early. It was the beginning of September, and despite the fact to have sometimes different maturity, phenolic maturity, we had always a nice balance between sugar and acidity. After, it was maybe I put a little bit new oak so much in some wine, and I would like just to have your opinion concerning the Blanchot, because, for example, Jasper Morris, that is a good journal, a nice journalist, a nice taster. For me, is one of the best. He told me, Franck, your Blanchot, your Chassagne in general, they are a little bit oaky. Alors, when he tastes on January 19. It was now we are 2 years later. It was interesting for me to have your opinion. Personally, I don't find too smoky character, but you have to understand that the oak, the good oak, contribute to develop an aromatic palette who's more complex and more interesting. After maybe sometimes a decantation or an opening and consuming after 15 minutes could be more interesting than to consume immediately. Is it maybe more a wine for the food that wine for the aperitif or for the bar? Je ne sais pas. I love the style.
Yeah, I would. I mean, yes, I can understand Jasper's comment about the oak. Now the wine is wearing it beautifully. It's brilliantly integrated, and as you said, for me, it heightens that white flower sort of aromatic presence, that almost jasmine and that acacia. It's beautiful.
Oui, alors, the flavor comes from the grapes and for this sort of alchemy with the yeast, with the listering, with the wood. You have to understand that, for example, my process, my vision is always to be less intervention than possible. So, sometimes I decide in a moment of the life of the barrel, I taste and I said a little batonnage to limit it, not the premix, but the beginning of the flavor, a little bit vanilla, a little bit buttery. I love to that the least capture the oxygen during the winter almost, but it's not a listering every week. It's one listering one every month, every 2 months, very low, just a remuage, just to move, like jammy, huh? not to change the ambiance, just to help to cap the oxygen, because the lees is the best friend of the wine, huh? But the lees, when the lees is possible, and for me, because I have the grapes, I know the quality of the lees, because we can rack, we can decant, and I know exactly what's the matter. After, for me, I love to maintain when after 1 year in barrel, it's 5 months in tank. And when we pass from the barrel to the tank, I like always to maintain a certain concentration of carbonic gas. Alors, why? Because it's permit for me to reduce the quantity of sulfite, and at the same time, because the carbonic is an exhauster of tasting, you conserve. Alors after, it's not necessary to bottling a wine with bubbles. Huh? It's a chassagne is not a champagne, but in the end of the process, when the fining is finished, when the filtration is realized, it's always a question: do you eliminate carbonic gas with nitrogen or not? And personally, I prefer to put in bottle a little bit with a little bit gas over than below. Donc, all my wine are close with 1 gram of carbonic gas, and I think it's better for the future to have always and the Diam cork that we use since 10 years now is a perfect instrument to permit that.
We were talking
maybe
about
we will
this
speaking
actually.
after.
Yeah, we were talking about this on the chat box actually, Franck, just before we move on to the last wine. Yes, we were talking a little bit about the benefits of aeration. Some of our guests here tonight have been talking about how they open the wines maybe at 5 p.m. or a little bit just before the tasting, and how the wines have really opened up. And I was saying to them, actually, when I was preparing the wines for, testing the wines for this tasting a couple of weeks ago, I found that the wines just blossomed 24 hours on.
Blossom, je connaissais pas blossom, c'est ça. Ouais, c'est ça.
Very good. I'm glad I can do something here. But yeah, I think they really do. And certainly the Diam it's so hermetic, isn't it? That, it does permit this longer aging, and, retaining some of that carbon dioxide in the wine as a substitute for adding yet more sulfites is, it's a choice, but I think it's a healthy choice. Anyway, look, I won't go on. Shall we move on to the Puligny? Because, we started a little bit late, so we'll go on a little bit.
Sorry, yes.
I know it wasn't your fault.
For Puligny, this is a regular Puligny called les mets. Les mets means like mass in Provence, les maisons, the house. Huh? And that's true. This is the first Puligny. When you pass from Chassagne, we pass in front of Le Morachet, and you're going down, and les mets, it just, you turn on, you go before 2 entrances to the village. You have Les Pucelles, Le Cailleret, Les Pucelles were in yellow, and you go down just immediately in front of Les Pucelles, you have Les Mets. It's a territory came from the top to below, but it's one of my favorite Puligny village alone. Even if I think I think that the blend of Puligny is sometimes better than every terroir. Les Mets and in front Les Enseignières, just below the Grand Cru, are for me the two best quality of Puligny. And the soil for Les Mets is very drained. You have a little stone. We have subsoil with colluvion, with a sort of cake, with marl, clay, rocks, and finally the soil is very drained. It's a soil with never met stress hydric, because Puligny means village on the water, huh? Like Puligna in Italy. The origin of the grapes is for me always magnificent. You have always tiny size. It's never big grapes. It's the Chardonnay. This is a vineyard that was my age. I'm 461, and this is a vineyard was born like me. Donc I have always a sort of vibration with this vineyard. She's not able to be called Pucelle, but believe me, when I put Les Pucelles and Les Mets, just 2 glasses of the same vintage with the same process, because it's necessary to judge on the same with the same limit, you find always a characteristic of fresh fruit, of sometimes a little bit reserve. It's a little bit not reductive, but reserve. It's never a wine coming up like this. Alors, sometimes the wood could be a little bit difficult, but for example, I think here you have the on the same time the nutsy, the hazelnuts, the dry fruit, the citrusy character, very typical for the calcareous style of the Chianti, the Jurassic calcaire. You have a little stone above, and it's a wine when you have never to pick. Of course, after a rain, for example, you receive a rain a few days before the harvest. Never, don't worry. You have not to be anxious with the botrytis, with the root, with anything. The concentration is always perfect, and almost the acidity is always here, and that's very important. For this reason, this is a cuvée who comes from one vineyard of Olivier Leflaive, and just the neighbor, and historically it was the same propriety. Donc we purchased these grapes since now 30 years, and I have a sort of always an emotion with this wine of Les Mets, because I produce personally a wine which is called Les Mets Chavaux in Meursault, and this is Les Mets. It's a fabulous terroir and very approach, and I hope behind the screen that I will have the opportunity to meet some people of the group of this evening to see what's the matter. Never forget that we have the possibility to receive you individually, independently, to show where are the vineyard, because taste the wine on the middle of the vineyard in the good season. It's a very nice moment that you probably have, and I hope to have the opportunity again to receive you and some people. Alors it's always barrel fermented, huh? And it was a bottling after 16 months, 17 months. Always 1 year in barrel and few months in tank.
It's so different
to recover.
Blanchot.
It is very different.
It's so fun to taste these wines side by side and to compare them, and to work out which wine which style do you prefer? Whether it's the appellation or the appellation and the lieu-dit in particular, but these wines are so different.
No, for example, it's interesting for you. You taste 2 villages. They are on the same altitude. They didn't like the same orientation, but they are on the same altitude. They are on the low part of the hill. The distance between Puligny-les-Mets and you have to cross the Bâtard Morachet, the Bienvenu Bâtard de Criot. Donc allez, half miles, and you have in front Les Blanchots, but with a little slope and the sediment, with Les Mets, with the logical place. We have the same erosion possibility in Les Mets that we can have on Les Blanchots. But after, it's a question of style. If you're looking for more richness character, I think you will prefer the Chassagne. If you're looking for more finesse or elegance, or you will prefer Puligny. But I love these two wines, and I love 17. It's a style that I like. Because for me it's precise. After, again, it's I've not to be convinced.
I would just to chip in, I would say 17 is very much, and this is my camp as well, but a vintage for the sort of the purists in white Burgundy, because it shows that wonderful finesse the fruit has, the purity of fruit, and typicity as well. Where 18, I guess you could say, there's a little bit more grandiose, there's a bit more flamboyance to the fruit, etc. But with Le May, what always strikes me is the vivacity, and there's an energy in the wine, which is Puligny, and it's, as you said, it's that vineyard, it's that Louis D. It really contains the minerality and gives it that verve.
Just to explain a little bit the terroir, after, that if we pass from 50 meters here from here, we change a little bit, but to be generalist, the limestone in Puligny is approximately 1 meter after the soil. In Chassagne, it's 2.5. In Meursault, it's 5 meters. Alors, after Meursault on the low part, on the same altitude, I compare with the same line, because if you compare on the slope, it's totally different. Meursault on the slope, it's the rock. The limestone is immediately here. When you are on the La Macabre, it's a place to make mountain bike. Okay, so you have the rocky. After, what sort of soil you have above? Because just with rock, a vineyard is not possible to grow. You need substrat. You need nutrition. So it's the soil would permit the nutrition of the roots. But in Chassagne, you have a little bit more deeper soil than Puligny. And when you are in Meursault-les-Cromains with another availability for corner and barrow, in the other side of Meursault, the limestone, you find the limestone after 6-7 meters. Because just neighbor to Le Cromain, you have magnificent cellar of Domaine Leroy. It's a very underground cellar. Donc an underground cellar, it's 5, 6, 7 meters from soil before to find the rock. Okay? Donc the position of Meursault, Puligny, Chassagne, and now Saint-Thomas will become a very nice place because you work with the proximity of the geology of the limestone, the origin of the depot of the different slice of soil that you can have everywhere, and you have to work with. And for me, it's a magnificent challenge to work and to try to. After, again, my job, it consists to give an harmony. I'm a little bit like in music, chef d'orchestre. Voilà, sometimes it's necessary to say, hey, stop, don't come on, and we educate different barrels from different source of grapes from the same origin, but that's a magnificent experience.
Well, can we ask you a question? Just lots and lots of questions coming up now in the chat box. And one of those questions, from a few people has been about managing the growers and, how that works, and whether, given the demands and supply and demand issues, how you manage that. And I pointed out that,
again, like for winemaking, I have no secret. I have no strategy. The fact is to always have relation with the guys who explain, to change the mentality, to change the techniques, to adapt. And I have to be honest, when it was possible to say many things 30 years ago, it's sometimes more difficult today. But on the same time, to have opportunity to purchase grapes, it's a long work, and it's not because you like that you have. It's necessary to be patient in our job. When I built the portfolio of Olivier Leflaive, since all this time, sometimes I wait 5, 6, 10 years to have to open the window to say hello, I'm here. If one time you're interested to work like this, after I have a philosophy. For example, I produced Cryo Bâtard Montrachet during 10 vintage. In a moment, our personal accord changed. It was a harvester machine and juice. I said, no, I stopped because I'm not a magician, and I prefer to say no when it's not possible. I love to maintain a portfolio because it's important for you, it's important for us, for everybody. But in a moment, if I lost the contract, if I lost the relation, I find another one. But I can replace Les Blanchots, for example. I can replace Les Mets by another Puligny classic. Les Mets, Les Blanchots, this is famous place. And this is a place that, and I have to maintain a relation and to buy. And sometimes, when 19 in Blanc Blanchot give me two barrels, when usually I have 6 or 7, I said, I have to say to Conan Barrows, sorry, this year it will be 50 cases and not 120. It's like this.
No, not us. You can do that.
After, we have to work with the mentality. We have to prepare, to suppose that, to explain that, to work the soil, that to eliminate the leaves, that to have normal yield. I work with agriculture men. Sometimes they're making ourselves a production in bottle, donc they know my problem. They're living with. And sometimes I work with people who are just producers of grapes. Donc I have to explain other things. The objective is to see what is possible, but I have to explain behind the screen that the ambiance, the mentality for the chemical, for the product, for the change a lot. But we are not in the end of the objective. We are on the way. It's better and better. It's more and more. The nature is more respected now than when I start my career. But we have always some people to convince that it's good to be prudent. Personally, I'm not bio because I think
organic.
Because if you're not classified bio, if it's just an ambition, it's okay, c'est bien. But for me, to be bio, it's necessary to be classified and to be voilà. Mais we are on the way to reduce more and more the chemical. It's usual with this sort now of vintage, easy to with sulfur and a little bit of copper. It's enough to maintain the fungus. We eliminate totally herbicide. We eliminate totally the insect problem. Donc we decrease a lot, but you have always people who are afraid by a storm, who are afraid by this one, and who are able they would like to put another treatment. And I say, no, because I purchase it, because I take the risk with you. Look, sometimes we take the risk with the guys. I cannot take the risk for ale and for cold temperature.
Can I ask you quickly about the somebody here asked about the growers of Les Mets, the contracts we have for Les Mets. Who are these people? If you could just quickly give us an overview. And I think you've been working with them for a long time, right?
Oui, absolutely. Again, Les Mets, 2/3 is all vineyard, 1/3 is a contract.
That's it.
And historically, it was the same property. It was sold to 2 guys. Donc one guy, it's always this guy, and the second, it's Olivier Leflaive. I obtained the fact to rent the vineyard of Les Mets on the beginning when I arrived to Olivier Leflaive. And after, with the time, we obtained the possibility to buy. Donc we rent during a few years, and after we could buy the vineyard. And 2/3 of the Les Mets, it's all vineyard, but just 2/3.
we buy every single bottle you make of this vineyard, isn't that right?
Now it's an exclusivity for you. Yes.
Well,
You have different exclusivity. All the wine that we taste this evening are exclusive for Cornet Barrow.
Yeah.
But I have to explain that we're producing a Puligny Montrachet Regulum with a 28, 30 different vineyards. We're producing a simple Puligny Montrachet blend of several origin of grapes. Donc we produce, and I have to explain that we have a little restaurant able to receive you for on a touristic activity. And now we have a new building ready since 1 year, but with the COVID we had to close. And we have a little activity in Champagne was new when we try to develop the same spirit, the same philosophy that year, to purchase specific vineyard and to propose specific champagne from specific place. It's new. We will be speaking another time because I think probably some of you would like to leave this meeting, and I'm able to answer some question if you like to stay more.
We have another
I am
question.
very well with you. Huh?
We have a lot of questions.
I'm not busy to
We
leave.
have a lot of questions.
We have a lot of questions. Franck, one was, personally, if you were to choose a white vintage between 2010 and 2019 as your favorites, or a couple, you know,
sorry, could you repeat, excuse me? Between
2010 à 2019.
2010 and
2019 for my favorite, personally, c'est ça? It's your question?
Yes, your favorite.
Yeah.
Alors, depuis 2010 à 2019, not 11, 12 for some wine were good. 13, I love the white because they were not positive on the beginning because it was a little bit fresh season, long maturity. But the wine of 13 today, they are, for some of them, magnificent. After some other disappear, but I suggest to try Puligny-les-Mets and Chassagne Blanchot 13. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I love this one. 14 was pure, a little bit like 17, on the same style, very fresh, good season, no early, not early harvest, but correct harvest, not too late. 13, we finished to pick in October. In a global warming, look at that, huh? You have 3 weeks. You are 3 weeks late. Again, 20 August. We begin in August, we finish in August for 20. It will be after. I love 17. 16, it's not my style. Sometimes I love some 15, but not all, because it's a little bit rich for me. After, it's a question of style.
Yes.
I love the fresh. I love refreshing wine. When for me, when I drink a glass of wine, I like to be wake up. Donc, I love acidity. I love when the oak is not so printed. I love when the alcohol is not so much. For this reason, probably 19 is not my style. 18, it's good, not all the time, because some grapes were not totally perfect. Some, maybe I pick some grapes a little bit early, but you know, always the thing when you are, it's a feedback necessary that you have to make with you. But for example, I like the Macabre 18. But for example, for me, in some Reuilly, for example, I am not on the same. I was maybe a little bit early. I have to pick early, maybe than logical. 19, bon, we're speaking, and 20, it's on the construction. It's building, but it's a nice vintage. It's a nice vintage. We will see. Leather. It's very interesting, but I saw fantastic comment. Can we ask Frank's Dylan question?
So Franck, there was a question just on curiosity. Did you personally, as a winemaker, have any new world reference points that you like, or think even come close to sort of competing with the beautiful style of white Burgundies and what you produce?
Alors, excuse-moi, j'ai peut-être pas tout compris. Est-ce que j'ai des Rebecca, est-ce que c'est OK si je comprends que est-ce que je prends des réflexions des vinificateurs du Nouveau Monde, c'est ça? Qu'est-ce qu'on me demande?
On t'a demandé, il y a de plus en plus de chardonnay d'autres régions dans le monde qui sont recommandés par des journalistes tels que Jancis Robinson, par exemple, Kuma River, de Michael Brackovich. Je ne sais pas si tu as dégusté, ce sont vraiment de très bons vins.
Non.
Par exemple,
c'est quel pays? Quel pays? Tu me dis, comment s'appellent ces gens?
Michael Brackovich, Kuma River.
Et c'est quel endroit? C'est États-Unis?
Non, c'est Nouvelle-Zélande.
Nouvelle-Zélande, d'accord. Sur Chardonnay?
Yes.
Oui. Non. Excusez-moi, c'est Australie.
Australie, d'accord.
Non,
je n'ai jamais goûté. Non, je n'ai pas goûté. Non. Ah, mais je fais partie. I am a supporter of the good wine from everywhere. For me, I'd like to be in Burgundy. That's true. It's a magnificent county to produce good wine, but it's a long time that I stopped to think that just the great wine are produced in Burgundy or in France. We have. I think the question is, what is the age of your vineyard? What is the combination with your winemaking? The most of the vineyard planted in Australia, in New Zealand, everywhere in the world since the last 30, 40 years, they are obligatory, great. And why a winemaker in Australia or everywhere has not the same with the same philosophy? He create the wine like us. After, it will be always interesting to compare the price and the quality, because after, for me, a lot of people try to compare the Californian wines with Burgundy wines. I remember about tasting 20, 30 years ago, but it's not the problem for me. A wine has to be tasted sometimes on the same county where it's produced. After a market like you open with the wine of the world, you are better critics and you have the better judgment than me, because I've known the opportunity to go in Australia, and if I pick some bottle from Australia and I come back in Puny, probably I'm not able to judge correctly.
I think
you're able, but I'm sure that today good wine are produced everywhere, and at the same time the average of quality, the level of quality moyen increased a lot since the last 20 years in Burgundy and everywhere.
Yeah, I
in
think
Burgundy the average quality is bigger. After, it's always good to see good wine and great wine. After, the spirit, the identity of the wine, it's a style. Personally, I think the civilization of the wine is global and general, and I say bravo, because it's a magnificent espoir for the future, for the market, for the young generation, because the problem with Burgundy, it's to be expensive. Donc, is it because you're rich that you have the opportunity to taste Burgundy wine?
Yeah,
for this reason, we create some wine like le Bourgogne-les-Cétis, like Oncle Vincent, like other to explain. But personally, I'm sure that Puligny will be never the best wine of the world. It's one of the best, but it's not the best, because the best. What is the best?
You will say that.
Yeah. Voilà. That's.
There we go. There's a picture.
After you can understand why the wine in Olivier Leflaive could be great, because we have sometimes some help about some visitors, and when immediately when they touch the grapes, the wine is sublime. Hein? N'est-ce pas?
No, I think not.
T'as vu, c'est ma baguette de magicien. C'est ma baguette.
No, but I think one of the interesting things, and this is the point that
Great photo. Oui, c'est ça.
this is the point that you know, our guest picked up, was that, you know, there are wines being made around the world, and yes, Kumarova is in New Zealand. I was having a blank there. You know, but there are many wine producers around the world who are so in love with Burgundy that they are producing their own styles, and they may be a little bit cheaper than Burgundy. You know, that can be a good thing and a bad thing. But, you know, whether that's, you know, New Zealand in Hawke's Bay, or you know, Canterbury, or whether that's, you know, parts of Sonoma Coast, I mean, Napa's very warm, or whether it's parts of, you know, cooler parts of Chile or South Africa. But I think it's an exciting mix. But Burgundy remains, I think, the holy grail. It is becoming expensive. That's the thing.
Yes.
Well, if we put different winemaker on this room, and if we have an exchange, we have maybe the same parameter in our brain to create the great wine. For me, the luck that we have, it's the climate and the subsoil. We are on the rare only country on the world to have calcareous. Donc calcareous, when you have calcareous, Chardonnay, Sauvignon prefer calcareous than the rest. After Chardonnay was imported everywhere in the world, and the vigor of the Chardonnay permit to have an adaptation everywhere with different sort of style, of soil, of climate, of winemaking. It's a plant was difficult to prove, but it's a plant really easy to produce everywhere. After, is the Chardonnay very exciting, whatever the country? Probably no, but if the creation of the terroir, the creation of a vineyard it's the result of a work of different generation, and I'm sure that everywhere in the world, I was surprised about some visitors from New Zealand, from everywhere, when they spoke about to me, say, you are able to create climat and lieu-dit like me. It's a question of ambition. But if you're speaking about X 100,000 cases, you cannot do that. I was, for example, concerned to be a consultant for a great winery in California. When I arrived, it was the harvest. They push the grapes or from different source of grapes on the same press. I say to the winemaker, what can I bring to you? If you give me not the opportunity to see what's the quality here and what's the quality here. If you blend immediately, you don't need about me. If I came here, it's to try to select the best position and to explain what we can try to do to develop an image. When you speaking production, you're speaking production. The difficulties with Burgundy today, it's to be in few barrels here, few barrels here, and but we have the patience to explain the terroir. After, it's a question sometimes after to the image that we have on the market. Burgundy has the image to be a little market, a little bit marché gris, marché noir. Donc c'est compliqué. Tu comprends ce que je veux dire ou pas? Tu as compris ce que je veux dire? Tu peux expliquer? Parce que...
Oui, no. We absolutely understand everything you said. Totally clear. I just wonder if anybody suddenly aware that we've just passed 7:30. Which is amazing, and thank you so much, everybody, for staying. And it's just
merci beaucoup.
But it's fascinating, Franck, and thank you so much for sharing all this with us. I don't know whether we have any more questions, or whether Joe, did we miss any?
No, I think we pretty much got most of them. You know, Franck, thank you for your time. You know, we're also aware that you're ahead of time here, and your evening.
I'm free. I've nothing to do now except to be with you.
It's very kind. but I think most questions have been answered. I haven't seen anything new. There's been a lot of discussion going through the chat throughout the evening based on the wine themselves, the vinification, viticultural questions in terms of the leasing, which we've touched upon. So no, look, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. It's been our most successful tasting to date, Franck, which I think is testament to you as a person, to the wines you make, to Olivier Leflaive as negociant and the men holders as they make their own wines too. For me personally, I would just like to add, I love the wines of Olivier Leflaive, and particularly Franck, I think is a brilliant magician, which is the word that's been bandied around correctly. For me and the sales guys, my first snapshot of every Burgundy en primeur vintage is Franck will come over to London and we do a colossal tasting across very many different cuvées, and it's normally my first little delve into that vintage, and it's not a little delve because Franck will then just give us all the information that we really so desire and strip from him. And then 2 hours later, we're having to sort of force salespeople back to the desk to actually do their job and leave Franck alone. But it's Franck, you make an incredible amount of wines. Your knowledge is unbelievable. So yeah, no, thank you for the time, and I hope everyone's enjoyed.
You were. I am very. I'm really proud to have this sort of exchange after. With my limited language in English, I'm not able to explain everything. I have to. Sometimes I cannot explain totally what the rest, but I think you understand by the screen the fact to what is the philosophy. Again, we are not just. I think I'm not. The regard of the people is not. I'm not a star. I'm just a winemaker. I love my job. Personally, I think I don't save life. Sometimes I can save humor. I can save an evening and happiness if my style try. But again, it's not easy because I cannot manage everything. I try to do. I'm visiting a lot of the vineyard. That's true. In July, in August, I'm not most in my cellar. I'm outside all the time because it's necessary to prepare an harvest, a campaign, a vintage. After we try with Philippe, with my assistant, with my team, to work correctly. Every day it's a pipette, a glass on the barrel to see what's the matter. And after more and more we building a cuvée and to manage a 75 label of white and 20 of red. It's not every day a great pleasure, but it's almost often a nice moment. I continue to love my job, but sometimes, like you, like everywhere in the world, we are tired. But you have to just know that we try to do the best, the maximum. Huh? And happiness, we have good customer like you, like Cornan Barreau, a long relation. It's the minimum to come to present. Unfortunately, this year it was not possible. Last year it was not possible. This year, if it's possible, we coming when it will be possible. I'm not anxious about that. For me, to traveling a little bit and to go in London, it's a great pleasure. Thank you again for the people who are behind the screen. I prefer again to have you in front of me, but you're invited, and if you come back, if you have the opportunity to stop in Puligny more and more individually, you're very welcome, and I hope that you had a nice tasting and no regret to buy this 3 bottles of wine of Olivier Leflaive.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for everything.